Yeah.
About time, you guys.
Yeah, right?
All right, good evening and welcome to the City Council Budget Workshop for Stormwater Utility and Miscellaneous Funds of August 2nd, 2021. We are now convened and we'll go through them serially by presentation beginning with the Community Redevelopment Agency. Sharon, would you like to lead us through that?
I can do it from here. Easier in case I have to pull something else up. Hopefully you can hear me with the mask. Everybody's good. So just to start tonight, we are at the asterisk there, August 2nd, the budget workshop for enterprise funds. August 9th, you've got library and A&H that will be coming Monday before your meeting. So we will have dinner, right, Maria? So 5:15-ish. And then the 23rd is setting the stormwater rate, and we'll also do a general fund update to tell you where we are at that point. September 13th is the first reading, millage, budget, CIP, and then the 27th is the final adoption. Tonight we have the CRA. We did briefly go over it during the general fund, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I did want to touch on it. Stormwater, solid waste, parks, mobility, road impact fees, water and sewer, and then wrap up. So on the CRA, we do a 5-year plan. This is a copy of the current 22 budget and 2 plan years, but we do 2 more beyond that. They're just difficult to see when you put them all on there. Big picture items is that for 21, we expect the CRA, for the year we're in now, the CRA to repay the general fund $1.7 million. For 22, they are going to repay the road impact fee, $800,000, and we'll get into that when we get to the road impact fee, and the general fund, 1.1. And then for 23, if you see that $1.2 million, that is North Independence Lane construction. So in 22, we're budgeting for the right-of-way acquisition or whatever we need to do to get the road through, and 23 is construction with CRA money, which we talked about is all doable because it is in your plan approved by the county to construct out Independence Lane. This is just a graph over time. As you can see, really started creeping up there. The brown line is the 90 million starting that value, and we're at 455 million now. And blue is base year, red is all the increment, and then we're going 5 years out. The green at this point, we're just projecting a 2% annual growth. It's a little uncertain right now exactly what's going to be happening. There are no really big projects in the CRA. There's a few small ones we budgeted for. And then for 22, it was a 3.6% increase. So significantly less than the last couple of years. So normally we were budgeting a 2% annual growth, so we're going back to that with the few things we know might be coming down the line, like Maitland Market, Fitness Center, a couple of retail, the condos down here on the other side, so those are in there. And then the biggest expense in the CRA is the debt that was issued back in 2004 and 5. Originally was 13.5 million. The payments were ramped. So at the beginning, we weren't paying very much principal, mostly interest. And as you get towards 2035, the payments are larger. So assuming at the end of the life of the CRA, it's earning more money than at the beginning. So right now there's still 11 million outstanding, and that'll be paid down. Those are 5-year increments of how it gets paid down. Any questions on CRA?
So we're going to be acquiring right away?
To straighten Independence Lane North, get that jog out of it, and to make it a full right of way to match this.
Is that CRA money that will pay for the right of way?
Yes. Okay, if nothing else, I'm going to go on to the Stormwater Fund. This is the summary 22 budget. The rate is at 980. It's the same as 2021 is what's budgeted in here. The maximum ERU for 22 is 1473. So the ordinance sets a maximum ERU, and it's the sum of all the expenses and a reasonable reserve for the fund. This budget transfers $523,000 from fund balance. You'll be starting, on the next page I'll show you, you're starting the year with over $2 million in fund balance. And staff is recommending adding 2 full-time positions and replacing the Vector truck. So the Vector truck, it's $400,000, so it's a big ticket item, but it's used to keep those lines, keep the lines moving, keep the water flowing. So it's a needed utility vehicle.
Sharon, is that coming out of fleet, or is that part of, is this 400,000?
It's the 400,000 where it says vehicles and operating capital.
Right.
That $400,000 is the Vector truck.
Okay. That, I wasn't sure if it was also the Vector, or was that the road cleaning sweeper? Or are we just gonna
No,
continue
that's
to
just the
have
Vector truck. The sweeper we replaced recently, 2 years ago. Yeah, maybe.
And the 2 full-time positions are, it would basically.
They would
drive
be
the truck.
technicians. And I have a slide on the personnel so we can kind of talk about where we are now and what those positions would provide.
Yeah, one is, am I right in this? We have somebody retiring that one of those positions would fill, correct? Is Michael retiring in one of those positions?
Michael's
or is
retiring,
those
but these are 2 new positions.
Yeah.
Oh, additional
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Michael?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so here's the 5-year plan, and the top line here is the starting balance and fund balance. So assuming we spend everything in 21 as projected, still start the year with $2 million. There's the Vector truck, and
Sharon, can I slow you down there first
Sure.
also? So why do we have $2 million coming forward? Is that just because projects weren't getting done in the last few years?
well, if you remember in the past, we would be budgeting for projects that were in the stormwater plan, and then find out they're not feasible. Bellows, the drainage ditch being one of that, was supposed to be an $800,000 project. You couldn't put the baffle boxes in, so that money stayed in fund balance, and we've changed that up now where we do the feasibility analysis first, and I'll show you on the slide coming up, where we have 2, one for Lake Gem Park Lake. Now that we have that property on Lake Avenue, when we took over Lake Avenue, maybe there's something we can do there. So we'll look at what's feasible with the property that we have or the property we can acquire, whereas in the past they just said, do 2 baffle boxes and figure out where you're going to put them.
So if we collected our $9.80 a month, at the end, and we did these things that you mentioned, at the end of that time, we would still have a fund balance of.
You would have a fund balance until the end of 24. In 24, you'd start 25 with about $400,000. And if you can see, there's some significant expenditures. One is like a capital improvement study that's in a design that's in there, and then vehicle replacement, which I'm assuming is a sweeper because it's $260,000. Yeah.
So if we kept it where it is, we've got enough money for.
You will make it through 22, 23, and 24 with the additional 2 positions,
Okay.
and then the projects in the CIP.
So if we increase that $9.80, we would just increase the amount of that surplus at the end of the year?
Well, there's several things. You could move up projects if we wanted to get them done faster. This sort of, puts them out over that time period, which I think are reasonable time periods. But yeah, so what would happen is at the end of, again, if it was 10 cents, I don't know that it would make you whole through 26. It would probably get you through 25.
So in the past, we've only had the capacity to do the projects that we were doing, and you mentioned the possibility of moving projects up. Is that because we would have the more capacity to take on more projects, or?
Well, some of the projects, like really large projects, say they're over $1 million, the fund can't really handle $1 million worth of capital outlay in 1 year, so we budget for them over 2 years.
Okay.
The positions that are added are more related to maintenance. So as over the years we put in all of these facilities, baffle boxes,
Right.
swales, and they need to be maintained.
Right.
And as it stands now, you have 1 technician. So if he's not here, you have 0 technicians. So 1 street sweeper. If he's not here, you have 0 street sweepers.
So we have the capacity, if we wanted to spend more, we could take on more projects? Because speed projects up. I'm just trying to get a handle on that, because as I recall in the past, we've always talked about, well, if we raise more money, we can't spend it because we don't have the staff capacity to spend it.
Right. Well, having 2 additional employees means hopefully that the foreman isn't getting on and having to do technicians' work and is actually there to oversee those. I mean, the hope would be you're fully staffed, you're maintaining what you're putting in. Now, for 22, their feasibility analysis. So until we get that back, we don't know exactly what we can do at Park Lake and Gem, or exactly what we should be doing based upon a cost, effectiveness. What's the most effective thing to do? So there isn't like a project lined up until the feasibility study is completed. The $500,000 in 23 is for the Gamewell drainage, which is under design now. So potentially that's one that could be moved up. The vac truck is a simple purchase. Simply simple purchase.
So Sharon, that's based on, right now, we'll have a surplus if the cost of labor doesn't go up, the cost of goods doesn't go up. That's not even thought of in here.
Oh, we make an estimate of how we think wages are going up, so that's
So that
reflected
is
in here.
In here?
Yeah, the issue, some of that savings comes from vacancies. So somebody leaves, takes you a couple months to hire somebody, get them on health insurance. So some of that fund balance will just come from natural lapse of positions. And it can't leave this fund. It has to stay in this fund once you budget it. But you can spend it on these projects. You can't spend it on anything outside this fund.
Right.
So some of that is natural, where you budget for chemicals for X, but you don't know exactly what you're going to need that year until you do the survey, and you spend a little less than X. It stays in this fund. So it just accumulates over time with interest.
Well, I don't know about, one of the things I'd be excited about having 2 technicians is maybe, help solving the problem over there at Lake Sibilia with, the gates don't go far enough down into the water. During the dry season, maybe they get out there and clean it up instead of 150 pounds is what we usually get out of there, falling into the lake of trash. So really those technicians will free up things, especially for Ryan to do, which I think is important. I mean, Ryan can get out to the schools, talk to the students, and educate them on why it's important for water quality to be, of great importance, and also to maybe look at some code enforcement issues. I mean, we have people all the time just, clearing their lakes out. In fact, Ryan was over by my house. I stopped to talk to him, and he had a little, what are they called, little flying things? The drones. And the guy was clearing his lake, and he was waving at the drone at the same time he was clearing the lake. So, I mean, if we educate those people too and say, listen, you can't clear your lake, and get our citizens educated on why. I mean, right now, everybody on the lake thinks every plant out there is a weed. So I think it's important to get those 2 new people in and make a great improvement and relieve Ryan of some of the duties. It's 21 lakes that we have, and for one person to really try to manage all that, that's an impossible task. I don't think anybody in the state's ever been able to really take that job on and get it done like it needs to be done.
Okay, and just as it relates to the lakes coordinator, which is what Vance is referring to, about 2 years ago, we essentially split his job in half. So he's just focusing on lakes, and then we have the stormwater foreman and utility superintendent that oversee the storm drain and storm drainage. So he is totally focused on lake quality, as opposed to, when Marissa was here or when Paul was here, and they were doing both flooding and lake quality. So I think he's really focusing on lake quality issues.
Right.
So here's the operating expenditures of the fund, and I'll give you more detail on those. But the current staffing table to the right, there's the utility foreman. We currently have 1 environmental specialist. We would add 2 new positions. That would be 3 environmental specialists. 1 equipment operator, which is your street sweeper, and then surface water coordinator is lakes quality. So one of the issues that arose this year is that one of the employees was out long-term, the street sweeping, equipment operator, which means your one technician is jumping on a street sweeper, so you don't have technically don't have a technician for that extended period of time. And you can contract with outside parties, which is what we did, but there's just nobody to back anybody up in those positions. And we've installed a lot of stuff over time, a lot of baffle boxes and things that need to be maintained. Swales that I'm sure need to be inspected that probably aren't functioning anymore, and that's something that technicians would be out there in the field doing.
Yeah, Southview, ours is in terrible shape. It's on a hill, and the lawn mowers come up and they just push the sand down it. So the pipe that takes the water out to the lake is just totally.
I'm sure there's a lot
blocked.
of places. Yeah. So in terms of the expenditures for operating expenditures, the non-personnel costs, 24%, your largest portion is drainage repair. There's about $207,000 for drainage repair each year, as well as miscellaneous repairs in the stormwater. Professional services are engineering firms and consultants who, come up with the plans as well as, the lake quality, handle some of the reporting that needs to be done to the state. The aquatic weed treatment, as we know, is to get rid of the invasive plants. The fund does pay $90,000 back to the general fund for administrative positions, which would be an allocation of IT, public works, administration upstairs, HR. So there's a portion, it's calculated each year, but the council would set a policy of only reimbursing the general fund $90,000. So that's where it is. Laboratory testing is water quality sampling. The chemicals are chemicals that are applied. Liability insurance for vehicles and all of the equipment, 6%. A small amount for contracted street sweeping. Utilities and solid waste. So street sweeper picks up stuff. It's got to be disposed of at the landfill. So there are costs that get passed through from the landfill. And then a whole bunch of other gas, oil, vehicle repair, maintenance, materials and supplies, training, those type of things are about 9%. So those are all the expenditures in that fund.
Sharon, can I hold you up for
Sure.
more time? So I was a little bit confused by this, but I think what you just said clarified it for me. So in the package, it says that this goes to the allocation of general fund uses that go back to the stormwater fund. So it says that the allocated administrative direct expenses are $90,000, but they're valued at $253,000.
Right, so it's all of like IT equipment, software that gets allocated. So every year we go in and we calculate, say for example, I have to calculate how much of my time I spend on water, sewer, CRA, stormwater, and then it gets allocated out. And it can differ from year to year based upon if stormwater is really active and we've got stuff going on, then public works director may be more involved than the next year where there's more water and sewer stuff.
What's the policy that cuts it off at $90,000?
The council's policy. It was the council's policy that said that they didn't want to fully reimburse those expenditures and send it back to the general
So
fund.
they're subsidizing, general fund is subsidizing $163,000?
Yeah. And that we did a rate study, and I'm trying to think how long ago that was, but we did a rate study and they came up with a recommended rate and recommended fully funding it. On water and sewer, you fully funded, and we're going to go back to funding the CRA as well so that they can repay the
So
general fund.
we're gonna change this with the others, or we're gonna leave, is this like an ordinance, or what exactly, is it just 3 or 4 council people said, let's just cap it at 90? Is it
Right,
some
so it
official thing, or?
It's a motion of council, so it's official until another council changes it. So it was, during the budget discussions, it was debated numerous years, because first it was reimbursing nothing. And that came because originally the lakes projects and street sweepers were in the general fund. So, it was only when they did a rate study and said, well, all these people, you're providing IT support, you're providing software, computers, and you're not charging the fund for all of those things.
So we did that with the vote of council, and we think this can happen.
We could just undo it.
You could, but we'd have to look at what rate would support that. Because that would be taking $150,000 away from this fund each year.
Right, but I mean, it looks like we're in a good position for the next
For
3 years
yeah,
to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. At least for 2. Well, 3.
I'm sort of anal in that I like to see everything neatly aligned with where it belongs, and so the stormwater fund ought to pay for itself and not be subsidized with other funds, because we're just taking something, sidewalks or street paving or something, and throwing it to the stormwater fund, and I'd rather, it's just me, I'm not going to fall on my sword, but I just like to see everything neatly aligned as to the true cost of everything.
Well, I can run that scenario and just come back with what those numbers would look like, and then we can.
If it's just me, that's
No, I'd like to see that too.
yeah.
It's not difficult to
Okay.
run the numbers and let you guys look at them. And then for capital, we've got replacing the Vector truck, the watershed study for Gem and Park Lake, the watershed study for Minnehaha, and then just general equipment replacement. I believe it's a camera. So that's the total capital outlay. And just to give you an idea of the rates, I mean, this is where we've been. We started at 7.25, went up to 10.39, and came back down to 9.60, and then last year went to 9.80, and that's where it's budgeted again. We do see some ERUs that'll be coming online. So the assisted living facility that's out on Maitland Concourse North, once they CO, you add that surface area in, so they'll start paying stormwater. Gem Lake as well. Since it's been vacant, he tore everything down. They don't pay, vacant properties don't pay stormwater, so once something is built on that, they'll be paying into this fund as well as hopefully improving Lake Gem. So we took into account some growth here, the fitness center, certain things that we know could happen. And then we anticipate in 20, these were carried into 21 from 20. One is the Winfield subdivision, and that has been encumbered and it's being expended, and that's fixing their drainage pipes over there. And the drainage at Thistle and Goldwater, and that is being designed as we speak. And I reduced the funding because it's going to be a little bit of a different project than was originally envisioned. There's a different solution to it. So we anticipate somewhere between 489 and 201 to be carried forward. It's not included in that $2 million. It's net. I assumed it was all going to be expended, but just to let you know, there will be some carry forward.
Do we have any projects on the CIP? I didn't see any. That doesn't mean I overlooked it. For Lake Lily in the near future.
So there's a watershed study, and then whatever comes from that watershed study would then produce a feasible project. This is where we do it. This is what it would do. And so that's in the 5-year CIP.
26.
26? Okay. Well, one is the study, and then one is the construction. Again, once we know what it is that could work down there. So I think you're hitting your top, Lake Gem, Park Lake, Minnehaha, Lake Lily. I mean, they are the ones that actually need help.
So is that 26, Kim? Is that when the study comes, or is that when the construction comes? Study?
I'd have to pull it up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I can.
This project design in 26.
Okay, so then you'd be doing feasibility before that, then the design, then the construction. And again, it depends on what it's going to be. Maybe, Okay. So on this one, you want me to come back with a scenario where the general fund gets reimbursed, and then look at some
I just
different
like to
levels of
see-
rates and how they.
I just like to see everything pay for itself and not.
Okay, solid waste fund. This will be an easy one. The total impact of fund balance is an increase of $6,000, so it's breaking even. The revenues from solid waste services remain flat. We haven't changed our rates since 2011 on garbage, and we're not recommending a change at this point. It's breaking even. Expenditures remain flat. The CPI, I just went out. Am I out on your?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, okay. Oh, just came back up, sorry. So the CPI adjustment for the vendor for waste hauler is 0.25%, so it's about as flat as you can get, except for recycling disposal costs. And those were an increase to the fund, but again, based upon what we have, we're still breaking even. And then you can see like in 23, a slight loss, but we tweak those numbers as we get closer, and so we'll see where we go if there's a big CPI increase. So currently, the way it works, our waste hauler is Waste Pro. Our contract is with Seminole County Landfill for the disposal, with the exception of recycling. They have no increase this year in solid waste disposals. They increased it 3%, I believe, last year for the first time in a long time. 0.25 for recycling, for residential, commercial, solid waste, yard waste, and recycling. And that's on our expenditures on our side, not being passed through to the residents. And a 2% increase in the administrative reimbursement to the general fund. So if you look at the pie chart, the biggest piece, the 72.3%, is contractual services. It's Seminole County and it's Waste Pro. We handle the customer service in-house, but they handle everything else. And then just to show you the final rate adjustment down here in the right-hand corner, in 2020 it was 2.5% and 1.3. It's at 0.25, but part of that is because the change in fuel was negative or has been negative. I'm imagining that's going to change next year, just based upon what we're all experiencing. You may see something a little bigger. In terms of cash flow, it's positive in 21 and 22, mostly as a result of the fact that the solid waste fund loaned some money to the general fund to purchase the doctor's office. So the general fund has been paying that back over 5 years, and that'll be the final payment.
I hope we're gouging them on interest.
3%.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Chair, what is the interfund transfer out of?
So there's two things. We have two things with this fund. One, we pay like a franchise. We pay a fee in lieu of a franchise. It's 15%. So typically, if there's a commercial company out there, a city will charge a franchise fee on top of it that they remit, kind of like we do with C&D. Here, we just do it internally. So we don't gross up their rates. We just take 15% off the top of the revenue, whatever we earn. So it goes to the general fund. In addition to the administrative, they're part of that spreadsheet where we calculate how much of Jerry's time and our time plus all of customer service. A good portion, a third of theirs goes to. Am I doing something? Oh, goes to solid waste. So they, in 22, it's a positive to cash at the beginning of the year. And as you can see, they've got 1.6 million. It stays fairly consistent over the 3 years. And that's where you want to be with the fund. It only has one asset. It has a vehicle. So if someone needs to go dumpster diving, it's got one vehicle that Michael can take to go out and follow up on concerns.
Hey, question, did everything get ironed out with waste management and the whole logistics of emptying the trash and getting back and being able to?
Yeah, so it seems like they were able to work it out. They were meeting with Seminole County, and I've not heard any other concerns from downstairs.
Good.
I have heard that they're having trouble keeping drivers, but I think that's just where we are generically. The good news is, good news, bad news, we kept customer service in-house, so the calls come to us. So it's not like you have to call Waste Pro and get blown off. You call us, and then we deal with Waste Pro to make sure it gets followed up on. So there are penalties in their contract for repeated calls for violations, which we could subtract off of our remittance to them. The solid waste fund has 10 months of expenditures in its fund balance, so it's in good shape in terms of not needing a rate increase at this point. And then on the miscellaneous funds, they were in the general fund budget packet, but I just wanted to go over a couple of them. One is Parks Impact Fee, and I think you did see that night. So we've got a placeholder for Fort Maitland Park of 1.2, which will be coming shortly for your consideration to finalize how you want to move forward. And then there was 85,000 as a placeholder in 23 for Hill Rec Park. But we actually think we're going to bring you something this year so that we can put some amenities in there. There's absolutely nothing in there for anyone to go. And we'd like to put some playground equipment, some basic stuff, fountain, picnic pavilion. It's not a lot. So we'll be bringing that to you in the next, I think, month. Mark, is it September or August? August. So that'll give just something to go and do and do in that park besides look at the.
Yeah, I'd be good with that.
And it's nestled right in the neighborhood, so I'm sure it'll get used.
Yeah, listen, there's nothing there. I take my dog out and let him run. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's open space.
Yeah.
Dog park.
Dog park, there you
Dog
go.
park, there we
Well,
go.
and this won't cut into whatever anybody's doing out in the field. It's going to be right, by the parking lot, and it should be an amenity to the neighbors. Road impact fee. So this is where we're talking about. So the road impact fee back in 2005 loaned money to the CRA, and it's about $1 million is still outstanding that the CRA needs to pay back. And so that's what we're recommending is let the CRA pay the road. It can only be used for new roads. So let the CRA pay the road impact fee back and let the road impact fee build a new road, because we don't have a lot of new roads, and this fund it's essentially closed because you adopted a mobility fee in 2014. So it's just sitting there with this.
Independence Lane, or what other road could there be?
That's what this is, Independence Lane right of way. So yeah, let the CRA pay it back. We'll use it on the right of way. Again, it has to be a new road or it has to add capacity.
So we're talking, it looks like a total of $2 million for right-of-way and construction of Independence Lane North.
Right. I mean, that's where we are. Again, we just based it off of if similar construction to what you have in front of you here, we would imagine it's going to cost the same. But that'll be a decision for you all. But
So that possibly would be brick.
brick. And then there is $75,000 included here for the Seneca Thistle. If you remember on the Dahmer QMP, there was talk about adding a turn lane and putting in mast arms at Seneca Thistle at Horatio. We don't actually think anything can fit there. I don't think a turn lane's ever going to go there. So before we'd even spend this money, this is just a placeholder for design. In-house, they're going to look at it and see if anything could even go there. If you've ever looked at the base of a mast arm, I don't know how you'd fit it on Horatio sidewalks. But residents have been asking about it, so we will look into it. And anyone who's called me, I advise them there was no conceptual design done during the QMP. It was just like, we'd like this and we'd like that, and this would be great. And that was all going to be done later. So I'm not even sure there's any feasibility to some of those dreams of adding a turn lane without taking somebody's property.
We'd have to take a couple people's property probably.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure that'll work.
And it's really tight. I mean, it's really, and again, I don't think you'll ever get the mast arms in there. Again, without taking people's property. So mobility fee fund replaced the road impact fee fund. It offers you more options. You can do sidewalks and trails and any sort of part of your mobility program you can use, and it comes from new development. So there isn't a lot of money in this fund at this point. There's a couple of projects in here. One is Keller Road design. If we're going to add capacity to Keller Road or bike lane or whatever's going to happen, then we can use mobility fees to do that as it's being rebuilt, but also looking at adding additional capacity or connecting up to Altamont's lanes through FDOT. So that's what's in there for 22.
And this $250,000 for Dahmer Drive sidewalk, that's to extend it north from.
Yeah, that's from 20. We spent that in 20. The Dahmer Drive sidewalk phase 2, if you want to call it that, design,
Yeah.
that's in the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah, there isn't enough money in this fund to really get that project unless some new development comes in and pays some mobility fees.
So none of this is speculative of, like, say, things that we think are going to happen,
The
maybe
plans
contours north or anything.
Plan 23, the up there impact fees, I put 37,000 for the development at the end of Mechanic Street. I don't know if it's going to happen, but they would pay. But, the mobility fees for commercial is just not very much.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, residential, relates to, we don't do trips anymore, we do mobility, so this is where that comes in. Okay, so those are just some of the miscellaneous funds that have CIP projects. The other big fund now is water and sewer. So we do a 3-year plan that we adopt, but then we do a total 5-year CIP with a plan. This fiscal 22 covers debt service and provides operating income of $477,000 with our current rates. It also recommends the addition of 2 positions. One is an electrician instrumentation technician. So this is someone that would handle diagnosing and troubleshooting all the electrical components that we have in our system. There's a lot of electrical components on a day-to-day basis without calling an outside contractor or taking the utilities manager away from their daily work to go try to troubleshoot before you call someone in. We also have what they call a SCADA system, which we can call the company to help us out, but somebody really needs to be an in-house expert on this. It runs all of we have it on wastewater and we have it on water. And so it's state of the art. It's what every city uses, every city. And so to have somebody in-house that is there day to day to deal with the issues will save time, energy, and effort from the operations manager being on the phone with the software company or the technicians. Additionally, a project manager. And this would be, as you've seen, the CIP for water and wastewater is huge. I mean, starting with the 1792 project, the lift station 1, there's 4 phases of that. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of capital improvement projects. And this would be an in-house position. Although we have Burgess and Nyepel and CPH, we have consultants and CEI, it still requires someone in-house to go to all those meetings and to coordinate with them and to make sure the projects stay on track and know what's going on and deal with residents' concerns and report back to us schedule changes. So this would be someone, you just can't leave the consultants out there coordinating for you. This would be somebody dedicated to follow up on all that CIP and keep it on schedule. So this plan funds those 2 positions, 2 new positions. When you come down to the bottom line, it's net income of $457,000. But as you can see in the out years, as that debt service gets added on from the state revolving fund, so as lift station 1 starts getting completed, we'll start adding debt to this fund, which has not had debt until I think 2014. It did before, but it's, as you're going in and replacing 50 and 60-year-old stuff, it's debt or it's grants. And so hopefully some of those grant applications will come through and we can fund some of them with grant money as opposed to debt. But we are currently doing a rate study, and so we'll be coming back to you to make sure that we can maintain all the debt coverage, debt service coverage, and cash flow needs of the fund over all of the construction we have planned, and I'll show you what's in the CIP. Currently, these are the positions. The purple ones are new, so it would be a project manager, the electrician, instrumentation operator. There would be 2 new positions, so water would have a total of 12. No new ones in wastewater, so they'd have a total of 7. To give you an idea of how those expenditures are spread, personnel is 15%, contracted services is 25%. Contracted services are comprised of Iron Bridge, and Snuckwater, and Altamont Springs. We do not have our own wastewater treatment plant, so we have to send it out of the city and pay to treat it. And so that's the biggest single expenditure in this fund, is paying for the treatment of wastewater. Debt service at this point is 14%, and that includes debt service coverage, so to make sure that you provide the coverage that the lenders are requiring you. Depreciation and amortization is 13%, so that's a non-cash expense. That's just the depreciation of your assets. Administrative expenses, and those are those fees that are being paid back to the general fund for water and wastewater, and then maintenance and materials and supplies.
Sharon, with the addition of the employees in both across the board, will it reduce our need to hire outside people, and this goes for some of the positions you talked about tonight, and then the urban forestry people, does that reduce the need to hire?
Not the urban forestry, because that's actually taking your maintenance to a higher level. You know, you're still gonna call Davy Tree to take down a tree. We're not calling Davy in now to make sure the saplings. But to some extent, maybe a small amount, it's changing the service. And our urban forestry program's gonna change the service level.
So has there been an analysis on that as to what it would cost to outsource that versus hire someone internally? I say this, one, because I've seen some of the projections and we're kind of looking at costs going up, and then the need to have to raise the fees or the taxes in the out years. And then obviously when you hire personnel, the last thing you want to do is have to reduce the size of your workforce. You don't want to go up and then have to come back. So I'm just making sure that we're
Yeah. In terms
cognizant
of, yeah.
that we're budgeting, knowing that by hiring these people, we're then going to have to potentially raise the fees or the taxes to pay
Right.
for those.
Some of the, part of it is that you also have more control over the quality of the work, in my mind, the quality of the work that's done. You know, we have not had great success recently with the median maintenance companies coming out and actually doing what they're supposed to do, and we've had that with grounds as well. We had it in-house, we've studied it, you know, we went outside on half of it, we brought it back in, so you know, we've done it with fleet, we've looked at it and studied it, but a lot of it is just the flexibility of having those employees here as opposed to going, they just don't show up sometimes.
Sharon, back to the forestry, if we were to hire an outside source to do it, we're not talking like a 6-month job, are we? This is
No.
something that's going to take years to do.
Right, I mean, I think there's a lot of work just to catch up with the the trees that we have now, just to,
Right.
you know, update the inventory and to figure out how we get more trees and how we replace the trees that are dying, you know, as opposed to somebody's still gonna have to, even if you have somebody else plant the tree, somebody still has to tell them where to plant it, you know what I mean? I don't,
I'm not picking on one job.
No.
Yeah,
No,
I'm not
I
picking
get
on
you.
one position or one job or one department. I'm saying that I've seen a lot of these slides have projected the need for increasing a fee or increasing a tax to pay for that, and it's easier to change consultants or reduce the size of your consultant budget than it is to let somebody in-house go, because you can't pay the fee, or that there's a reluctance by a future council to raise the taxes in order to pay for what has been done. So I think there's going to have to be a recognition that when you do all this and you staff up, you're going to have to pay for it. So I'm just.
yeah, no, and we've looked at, over time, looked at it both ways. Does it make sense to bring somebody in when costs escalate and it doesn't fit into your pay plan, right? So it doesn't fit into our pay plan, so then we hire a consultant and pay him more than we would pay an employee. So I mean,
I get.
yeah.
Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm just.
It goes both ways. I think you have to look at it. So we'll
Yeah,
go
and
through those
I'm just-
positions to that point and just see if there's like an alternative private solution to urban forestry. I think most cities who have implemented it have brought that in-house.
And I think I'd be less concerned if the budget currently provided for it, but looking at the out years, we're looking at having to raise fees. And I just think we need to understand that on the outset. I mean,
Yeah, we haven't raised fees in, what, 3 years, 4 years?
it's actually not true.
No?
We raised the stormwater fees last year.
Well, I mean, the general fund fee, let me take it back, we haven't raised the general fund fee.
I'm not, Ben, I'm not arguing, I'm just thinking it's something we just have to know.
Right.
We are setting ourselves up for.
Let's look at all angles, I got that.
And what we've, Jared, you just, I was going to speak, but what we've done in the past, that we made it through 2008 and on the 90s, is we always have attrition. And so you just don't fill those positions until you get yourself right again. It's always seemed to work. We've not had to lay people off. There's just enough movement. We don't have FRS. There's no pension holding you here if you're a general employee, 6% here. So we tend to lose people versus FRS employers who, you know, they have you on the hook for your pension.
I just hate having to go back, I mean, you don't ever want to have to go backwards on it.
Yeah, well, and we'll look at what, if there is a private sector
And I'm not,
option.
I'm not advocating, I'm not trying to make a statement again on any particular thing. I'll stop, but that was just
Okay, and on the rates, so rate increases are set per code, and it's based upon CPI. The CPI adjustment is 1.17%, which on an average customer's monthly bill would be 53 cents a month. And as I mentioned, we're doing the rate study to make sure that the fund is going to be able to remain in compliance with debt service coverage requirements and stay healthy. From a cash flow perspective, there are surpluses and deficits in different years, and it's going to be depend on the timing of the proceeds from the state revolving fund and the capital outlay. But if you look along the at the top, net cash provided by operating activities is always positive. So you've got cash being generated by operating activities. We just have a tremendous amount of capital projects going on right now, and so that's creating, these different amounts that you see here. But they tend to equalize out. They should end up matching when you pay for the expenditure and you get state revolving fund money. You should.
So, real quick on the rate study, would that be looking at covering the debt from the Dobber Hills expansion? Do we have a good idea that this isn't going to be like sticker shock, is it? Do we have a good idea that we're in a good place?
I mean, right. So they're in the plan. I mean, it's in the 5-year feasibility plan. But what we're starting to see is just that as that debt service is coming on, which we project out, that we need to make sure that we're keeping all of our costs in line, compare ourselves to other folks. It also means people in Domrick will start paying sewer charges.
Right.
So, I mean, we're taking all those into account.
I just wouldn't want to be going this far along and then come up with a study and go, oops.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a small project, but lift station 1 has to get done.
Right.
There's no choice with that. That has to be done.
To me, it all has to be done.
Right.
I just don't want to I thought we were kind of all ready, set, go on the whole sewer expansion over there. I guess my concern would be if a rate study came back and said, something that we didn't anticipate, how would that impact the project?
Right. Well, I mean, then you have to look at the projects and what needs to happen and what can be moved out, pushed off. We apply for grants, hopefully get some of those grants, so it'll be positive. But I don't think we're looking at anything that we didn't know we were doing. I mean, the last study looked 10 years out, so Domrick was in there. It's a little more expensive than we anticipated, and we've tried to escalate it a little faster than this study 10 years ago. So I think we just need to be cautious and look at it. The last thing we want to do is run out of cash or end up in, compliance with debt coverage issues. Let's just call it due diligence. I don't want you to panic. So here's the water CIP. And so the focus there is on water line replacement and upgrading to 8-inch. So that's a level of service. So going in there, much like the Mohican water line, and upgrading those lines that are out there. So every year you see some of that, as well as some water plant rehabs. So again, old water plants going in and rehab those. So
Sharon, can I ask you a question about that? The upgrade to 8-inch. So what do you have there now?
2, and some 6 or all. Some 6, some 2.
It's just like just putting that fire with a garden hose, basically. So if you're going to go to 8-inch, I mean that's a significant jump. I mean, is it done just with jack and bore, or are you going to tear up the streets, or how do you get the pipes through?
It's going to depend on the location. Some areas it'll be easier to bore it through, and if you need to go ahead and do roadway work when we're there, or sidewalk work when we're there, it might, some of those streets may be, open cut. So it depends on how many connections we have on each one.
So that's not a closed system, I guess. The fire hydrant system is all hooked up to the.
Yeah, everything's looped.
And I think, because Kim, probably when you were here before, we were supposed to be doing the 2 to 6, and it's
Yeah.
almost like we missed the 6, and like that project then got kind of slowed, I think.
I mean, we've got a very long
Yeah,
list.
there's a long list.
of Either
So-
replacements or upgrades.
Using potable water for putting out fires, is there a way to get any kind of reclaim line in from Altamont to get that done, or?
So not possible over here, and we looked, it's too far from Iron Bridge or from anywhere. We talked about over here, on the west side, but it's a massive project, and we put in for a grant to do the study and didn't get any funding, and Altamont's not gonna pay for it. So their public works director who was working on that project is gone, and there's a new public works director, so we could talk to them. That would be mostly the west side, because I don't know how you get it across I-4 from the plant. They do on their side, but it'd be running lines to us. But we talked about it over the years. They've mostly focused on the west side.
What are we replacing that with? What kind of pipe?
It would depend on if we're open cutting, it'd probably be ductile iron. If we're going to directional drill it, that's usually like a very large, thick plastic that can take.
Is that the bendable
Yeah.
stuff?
And then in 2026, there's at 75% of our permitted capacity, there's a required update. So if that's where we are, then we'll do that update. But just want you to know if it happens sooner, we'll be doing it sooner. And then in 2025, a master plan update. So by that time, we should have accomplished some of these projects, if not all.
One of the things that I remember from the past, and I've been listening, you gave us great information. There's a lot of it, so I've probably passed a couple things by. But we're trying to get off of septic, and I think we have the Mayo Drive next. Is that right? What are we thinking for that? Is that next year or 2 years?
No, it's not next year. We're going to finish Domrick first. That's the phase, and we keep looking for funding for Mayo. We can get funding for that, and then we don't even have a plan for Druid yet. And then we've got the Carver area on the southwest side of town. So more than you would think, more people on septic than you would think.
Oh, yeah.
City.
We just, one of my neighbors today, she looked at the lake quality, and she's like, man, why is there, so much sewage in our lake? And that's because somebody on Faith, I think, had messed up septic tank about 3 or 4 months ago, and it kind of drained in. When I walked around, you could see it was drained. They were working on it, and I think it must have drained into Hope and then came into Charity.
Oh,
Yeah, there was a little spike in the.
not good.
No.
And then the big projects are in wastewater, I should say, the expensive projects. Upgrading to submersible lift station 8. We talked about Keller Road and the pipe under Keller Road, coordinating that with the road reconstruction, so having those happen at the same time. Lift station number 7, Force Main. Then actually constructing the Keller Road gravity, and then sprinkled in between our Tuscarora and Domrick Hills sewer phases. So we've got those throughout the 5-year plan. Total plan is on just under 13 million. So the next steps, we are going to have an art and history Maitland Public Library workshop on Monday at 5:30, August 9th. We typically set the stormwater rate on the 23rd. It does not have to be set until the 13th of September, but I'll bring back the information that you've asked for. If I can get it ready for this Monday, so at least you can look at it, I'll get it to you this Monday. But I'll hopefully get it to you before the 23rd, so you have a chance.
That's a one-shot deal, right? Is that not like the trend notice?
Well,
or is that-
yeah, I mean, it's a resolution. So you could table the resolution to the 13th. You can't table it to the next meeting because you have to set it by the 15th of September. So, so that's why I said I'd like to get those scenarios out to you with different scenarios so you can chew on them or call and ask questions. I'll also do a general fund update on the 23rd from where we were at the workshop and give you an idea of where we are at this time, moving things around. And then on the 13th, we set the tentative millage rate and set the public hearing dates for the budget and CIP. Sort of a do-over because you already have sent out a bill with those dates, but the bill, the tax bill is going to say the 5 millage. The ad says whatever you set on this night, the 13th. So we run the ad in the paper until we can run the ad that says we don't run the ads in the paper. Maybe next year, we hope. And then the 27th, that's it. You've got to adopt a millage rate that night. You can go down, but you can't go up from whatever you set on the 13th and whatever you set in your trim notice. Any questions?
Okay, any questions of Sharon?
I will email you guys this PowerPoint just because I know I went really fast,
Yeah.
and that way you can see the numbers better.
I have a couple questions, but I think it's going to be more for Kim, but I didn't know if we're going to have to re-guess if they. But
Anybody from the public want to take a shot at it?
No one ever asked me that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Time's up.
But Lee might.
Lee, you have anything for us? Lee?
No, I'll talk at the next legislative meeting.
Okay, good.
Here, I'll take one now.
We already closed it.
Since this the public hearing's been reopened, this is important stuff. You guys have all heard me talk about it for years and years. We are generations behind in our sewer and water line. And sooner or later, somebody's going to have to be the adult here and we'll have to accommodate this. And there's going to be sticker shock. That's those poor folks, those 453 houses or whatever it is in Thomas Hills are going to be unhappy campers when they get a sewer bill. But it's just the price of doing business now and the environmental upside to all this. So you guys know all this. I've said it to you all individually before. So appreciate what you're doing. Thanks.
And I appreciate that, Dale. I mean, to me, a modern city with so much septic tanks is just,
Did I get to get my name in that?
No, Dale, it's not on 108 and we want to get this done while Mike is on council.
I will be the human shield.
That's right, you're gonna be.
They can all come at me, but septic tanks, I mean, I might as well ride my horse out, hitch him to the post there, and come in. Those days need to be over, and all that crap is going into the lakes. It's just kind of,
Around the druids around here.
yeah, we
later.
definitely need to get the Druid, and we need to get the Mayo, and get that done.
I had a couple questions real quick. I think maybe for Kim. Kim, one thing I was talking to Sharon, or Sharon, it doesn't matter. We were talking about the GIS with the storm water and the pipes and the outlets, and getting that completed. Is that a project that we need to add into the CIP for the future or this year to get it completed? I know the discussion started like 6-7 years ago about doing that because it used to be, where was the pipe? Oh, go ask Mike, he knows. So getting that complete is something I'd like to see done. Is that something we want to add?
So the goal right now we have it on our phones that staff will be able to go out to that spot and add it into the GIS. So we have the technology. Right now it's just the people, because it makes more sense rather than to hire a surveyor at a higher rate doing, they're getting down to, inches. We don't need that. We can be 5 feet off. We just need to know that it's there and which way it flows. So the goal would be if we get these 2 new techs, that when they're out doing inspections, they go ahead and put that information in, or they're checking it while they're there.
Oh, good.
So it may take us a little bit longer that way, but it's something that, we know that we've got somebody working on it every day.
Yeah, it's not a macro thing anymore. We've really narrowed it down. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, we've got the the bones there.
Mhm.
We're just missing a few appendages, I think, so.
And just for my own knowledge, I know, like, you know, the street sweepers last 5 years. How long does the Vector truck last? How long do you get a life out of
Usually
that?
around 10 years
10 years?
is what you get out of it. I can't remember something. The problem that we have with these is that we could order it today, and you may not see it for 2 years, because they basically have to build them. And it used to always take a year, just from when you ordered it to when you got it. It's now even it's just
Longer.
longer because of everything else going on.
One thing with the stormwater, and I don't know what the plans are, so are we still, we're bringing on 2 new people, are we still gonna use the person that we've been using to help Ryan in stormwater, Amy, every once in a while, or is that something that you think we alleviate that cost by bringing on 2 new people?
That's been more like on the technical side of it, so with Ryan getting up to speed, I wouldn't expect to have to depend on Amy as much as when we didn't have anybody in the position,
Mhm.
or we had somebody new, we were depending on her a lot just from her experience and getting more technical direction. But now that Ryan's
Up and
getting up to
running.
speed and he's making a lot of the contacts where he can call, other communities and get answers. We don't really need to depend on that as much.
Good, so that's a fee that'll go down.
Yeah.
I guess my last one is, and this is just personal, I'm sorry, we can close it out. Aerators, are there any other lakes that we do not have aerators in that would be good to install aerators? That maybe, that would help out the lakes?
Possibly. I'd probably have to get with Ryan and see what his recommendation is. I know that he's proponent of using those. It's getting a lot of...
To move it from the bottom up and get the whole lake?
So I know we have, and I think it's more than, we've got one in Lake Jim. I think it's more than one, actually. And we have one at Lake Lily. So, yeah, I can check with him to see if he has recommendations for any of the others.
Are those a big expense, or are those something that?
They can be, I think. It depends on the one that we're replacing for Lake Lily. I don't know what the years for. We're replacing the pump, the fountain in the aerator. So maybe over 20,000 something. So I mean, it may be like, let's just say 10,000 in that ballpark.
So if that's something we want to do in the future, that's a future CIP item?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely a DOP that we can help.
Okay, thank you, and thank you guys for letting me ask those questions, I appreciate it.
Okay. Workshop done.
Hello.